I grew up in a dysfunctional household, which led me to the streets and becoming rebellious. During my life in the streets, I found knowledge of self, which led me to becoming an entrepreneur. I opened a store called Hobby Boys, which was known in the community by many. I also opened a restaurant called Richie's. I was at the peak of my achievements. Things was going great. Life couldn't get no better. And then the pandemic hits. Now I'm back outside, enjoying life to the fullest. Despite the minor setback, it was a plan for a major comeback, which led me into the fashion and creating the brand B-Lo NY and bringing you this content at Real Spill 716.
Hey yo, it's your boy Tojito, and we here at Real Spill 716, and we finna get into the topic today's culture. Your culture, my culture, our culture. But before we do so, we're gonna have a moment of silence for those that lost someone. All right, let's get into it. Hey, yo, your culture is your way of life. You understand? And what that means is it has a lot to do with your beliefs, your religion, your traditions, your community habits, you know. All that's part of your culture, your language, you know, your doctrine. All that's part of your culture. That's your way of life. Now, we're going to get into the differentiations of culture. You understand? For one, being an African American, so to speak, you know, we come from an urban culture. We come from a inner city culture. You understand? We come from a hustle and bustle culture. You see, now our ancestors, our people, or even our grandparents, they come from a southern culture. But the southern culture still had that hustle and bustle. It still had that hush behavior, that underground, underworld behavior to survive. That's part of our culture. That's like in our DNA. You know what I'm saying? Our behavior comes from and is derived from our culture. And our culture was given to us by our elders, our parents, our grandparents, their parents. We probably stop about right there. That's probably about the most influential culture we got. But it's more to our culture. See, in the essence of life, our culture originated with being one with nature, one with God, so to speak, one with the source, one with the one. You know what I'm saying? That was your culture. That was your way of life. You know, if you dig deep into biblical doctrine or any type of religious doctrine, if you dig into their culture, it was always about being that oneness with the Almighty or with their God or with whatever they create, whatever they consider their creator or creative source. That was their culture. That was their way of life. Now see, us being indoctrined in this so-called urban or so-called city way of life, our culture has become somewhat detached from that origin of being one with the source. You understand? But there was a point in time where even in the music and even in the behavior, that oneness was being spoke about. That was part of our culture. It wasn't uh it wasn't made up. You know what I'm saying? It was practiced. It was something that was derived from an actual cultural organization, so to speak. You know, so it all trickled into our music, our clothes. If you look back into the 70s, that's all culture. That's culture. That's power. That's conscious. That's unity. That's culture. Even in the city, it was culture. We've become detached from that in so many ways due to materializing our culture. You know what I'm saying? We traded organic for synthetic. You know what I'm saying? We traded that wholesomeness and that godliness with materialization and admiration. You know what I mean? Clout. You know what I'm saying? Clout have you going against the grain of your culture. You know what I'm saying? And with that, we give a moment. Let's give a moment to our sponsor. I want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, B-Lo NY, with that great premium quality fashion. They got the stress tees. You see the quality. They got the stress tees of all types, colors. They got yoga sets for women, all types, colors. You see, t-shirts. Got your crop tees for ladies. Got your hoodie dresses for ladies. Got your bags, your crossbodies. I got me one of these already. Feel me? Got your suede truckers. Got your snapbacks. Official tissue snapbacks for you. Got your distressed hoodies. Got your distressed shorts. Got your beanies. Come on, man. Get fly with B-Lo NY. Premium quality, quiet luxury. Word. Check them out at B-Lo NY _2024 on Instagram, or you can check out their website, which is BLO-NY.com. Tell them Real Spill sent you. B-Lo NY. You gotta stay fly in that B-Lo NY. Shout out to my guys. Check them out. But yeah, your culture, you know, our culture derived from being one with the land. So it was like agriculture. That's why they call it agriculture, so to speak. It's like one with the land. To now where our culture went from industrial culture to now we're into technical culture. You understand? And that technical culture has a behavior. It has a language. It has a way of life. You know what I mean? Like right now, we in the studio, everything's technical, everything's digital. You know what I'm saying? And you have to adapt to the culture constructively. You feel me? That's the key to evolving. And every culture evolves, but it always keeps the premise or the base of what that culture represents or what that culture means and stands for. And that's what you gotta always remember. You gotta always remember, you gotta keep your culture. See, you got African culture. You see, they got a way of eating. They got a way of living. You understand? They have a behavior that sticks to the principles of their country because that's their culture. You understand? You got Dominican culture. You got Puerto Rican culture. You know what I mean? You got indigenous culture. You know what I'm saying? That's truly, truly, truly from where we really actually derive from in another sense. But that's a cultural topic within itself. You know what I'm saying? You do your own due diligence and your own research on that one. I'll give you one of those later on down the line. But you got to uphold your culture as well. As you see, like I said, the African, Dominican, Puerto Rican, Italian, they all uphold their culture. You understand? They stand with tradition, whether right or wrong. They stand with tradition and they still carry on those traditions and they teach those traditions and beliefs to their children. You understand? Now, African Americans need to do the same. But what you need to do as an African American, first and foremost, is find out what your culture is. You feel me? What your way of life is. And like I said, all origins, all nationalities, all essences, their culture has always been being one with the source, one with the creator, one with God. However, even if you want to be one with Christ, however you want to put it, it's the oneness that becomes your culture, that becomes your way of life, that becomes your behavior, not just your speech. You know what I'm saying? And that's where us as a people, as a lost tribe, as those that's really become detached, that's what we got to get back to. You know what I'm saying? And once you realize you get back to your culture, then you'll realize the beauty in life. You understand? Because your culture is designed to enhance your life. This destructive culture that we living in, this is not designed to enhance. This is not designed to build. This is a destructive culture, a destructive way of life. And understand that in this culture, there's principles, there's beliefs, there's language, there's traditions. You understand? There's like I said, there's behavior, but it's destructive. And in a sense, we have a self-destructive culture, and we idolize and add praise and admiration to it because it has become commercialized, glamorized, and glorified as entertainment. So really, all in all, our culture has generally become the entertainment culture, which in a sense is what it has always been to those in power, or let's say powers to be. You always had the ability to entertain. You've always had the ability to shuck and jive. You know, we laugh at our own ignorance and we think it's hilarious. You know, and that's what makes comedy. That's what comedy is. And that's part of our culture. But it's not building us. It's not constructing us. You know what I'm saying? Before I go any further though, we're gonna give another shout out to our sponsor, Pop Out Enigma. Enigma, where you could go and get all your social media needs met. Where you could go and rent out podcast space to do your own podcasting or your own YouTube channel. Where you need photography, you need product shots, you need on-site film work. Pop Out Enigma. My man Louis Armstrong will get you right. Tell him Real Spill sent you. Now, hey yo, since we on the topic of culture, let me give you a short story. Now, I grew up in the street culture. You understand? And what that is it pertained to a lot of hanging out, mingling, and dwelling on street corners, bandit houses, and maybe local neighbors or whatever, porches, all that. Now, I say that to say this. That street culture right there shaped and molded a generation that used to play hide and go seek outside, used to play touch football in the street, tackle football in the snow. We talking double dutch. We talking hopscotch. We talking hide and go get it. We talking a bunch of just gossiping on the porch about daily life. Organic, genuine, nothing made up or scripted. And it was routine. You understand? That was part of a culture that shaped and molded, like I said, a generation that there would never be another cultural generation such. And I'm gonna say this because before my culture, which was the actual street culture, like I said, the hanging on the corners, the dwelling in the neighborhood. You understand? Before that, it was the conscious culture. And the conscious culture was pretty much the same, but they despised the street corner. It was more frowned upon maybe in our parents growing up and our aunties and uncles growing up, but they had the hanging out and the mingling and the cool aspect of the urban culture, which didn't have really the violence and the destruction that came with my culture of growth. But I say that to say this. The conditioning in that culture shaped and molded a generation of people that will never be like no other. And I can go into depth of explanation of what I mean. The common sense that culture created when, mama said, don't answer the door, you listened. You understand? We was rebellious in our culture for leisure and fun. It wasn't really for disrespect. See, the culture now that's amongst us, that's upon us, it's a culture of disrespect, and they feel like that's where the brownie points come in. Being disrespectful. And that's not the culture that I come from. And I'm saying that because my generation is the grandparents now, or the parents now. And if my generation just reiterate back to the culture where we come from, do as I say, not as I do, and we shape and mold these children into a respectful mindset, then we can regain this cultural way of life that's gonna born growth. You know what I'm saying? And not destruction. Word. But yeah, back to culture. That's part of culture. You know what I'm saying? We got to get into a lifting each other up culture without anything in return. You know what I'm saying? The gratitude got to come from just genuinely providing information or assistance to aid that person in our culture. You know what I'm saying? The cutting down, yeah, it's entertaining, you know, but it's not healthy. And that's another thing. Culture has always been healthy. Our diet, you understand? Yeah, it might taste good to you, but it might not be good for you. And I know it's hard, but yo, if your culture is being one with the source, you gotta get back grounded. You gotta get back grounded, and you gotta build from the ground up. You know what I'm saying? That's a part of refinement, and that's a part of your culture as well. Because there's parts of culture that can be refined because our ancestors meant well, but they might not have knew well. You understand? So, like it's saying in the great book, you know, pretty much don't follow the sins of the fathers. You know what I mean? Don't follow the footsteps of your ancestors or your peoples before you, because they was a little lost too. Basically, what they saying is, find your path. Take that bit of culture and find your path with this new bit of culture, with this new bit of common sense and understanding. You have to merge it. You can't reenact it. You understand? Because evolution, like I said, is all part of culture. Evolution is all part of growth. You know what I mean? And when you got the knowledge and you got the understanding of evolution and growth, you're going to always try to improve your culture. You know what I mean? Even with the fashion culture, you see how the fashion culture evolved in some senses. As far as creativity, that's for the better. You know, and some others, some may beg to differ, just in the view and in the perception of how it look. But that's all part of the fashion culture. You know what I'm saying? And you got to be in tune. You can't be judgmental on the culture, but you got to understand culture has to be constructive and productive. Can't be teaching and preaching pro-righteousness, but your ways and your behavior is doing other. And on that note, I'm gonna wrap up culture with respect your way of life and make sure that's part of your foundation, and resort back to the source of your nation, wherever you from. And your culture shall persevere. You as well. Real spill.